juice.
And now, a sound test.
Psst.
How the fuck do I follow that up?
I don't know.
Creepy.
The fucking sound tests. Okay, that's enough. So, our friends over at Outlandish Adventure have recently, in partnership with a friend of theirs, David Adams, they've recently released this new big compendium called Honor and Devotions, which is a bunch of cool stuff for, obviously for 5e, otherwise we wouldn't really be talking about it, based on Japanese culture, which I think is kind of interesting. And I was kind of skeptical at first. I'm not gonna lie, I was very skeptical at first because people tend to go off the deep end with stuff and go into full weeb territory.
Yeah.
And that is never fun.
Not your style.
Yeah, it's not my style at all. But what they've done with it here is super cool. Like, honestly, I really, really like it. It's like easily one of my favorite things that Outlandish Adventure has put out. And for those that don't know, because they are quite a small company, Outlandish Adventure is run by a very, very small group of individuals, most prominently by one Ross Lacer, somewhere in America, somewhere. I don't know where, and I doubt it's a public thing either, in which they make content. They currently have several classes available for download on the DM's Guild. If you search for Ross Lacer, spelled Leiser, you'll be able to find it all. There is one race on there, which is kind of interesting as well. And there are several classes, one of which is probably one of my favorite homebrew classes of all time, the Odic.
Oh, yeah, I'm playing an Odic in one of the one-shots we're coming up. It's coming up.
Yeah, though I may be a little biased, because I was the one that asked them to carry on working on it when people stopped being interested in it. And I asked them, like, hey, when are you going to finish this? And they were like, wait, people want us to finish this? Okay.
I'm glad they did, because I'm looking forward to playing
my
character that is an Odic.
To give, because obviously this is not what we're talking about, to give a very loose thing, it is, for those who browse Unearthed Arcana ever, a class that sacrifices its own health to do things is very rarely good or well balanced in any way. The Odic is as tightly balanced as you can make something like that, especially since it's a full caster.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff that they've done with it, super awesome. Thematically is way more interesting than just, oh hey, I'm a blood mage, I cut myself for magic. Is like, this one is way cooler. It's a lot rooted in Norse mythos. Even the name itself is based on a pseudoscience term. Super cool. Highly recommend you, especially check out all of Outlandish's stuff, especially the Odic. I am biased, but the Odic is pretty awesome. As for Honor and Devotions, though, it is a surprisingly lengthy work for such a small sort of group of people, and considering it's a fan homebrew thing, this kind of stuff being sold is actually kind of rare, especially to this length and to this quality. There's 47 pages full of really nice art, very well designed across the board. I really, really like it. On the whole, there are races, archetypes for every at a brief glance. Yeah, an archetype for every single class from the player's handbook, and one archetype for one of Outlandish Adventure's classes. Kind of disappointed they didn't do one for all of them, especially the Odic, because it's my favourite, funnily enough. And also a full class. And the full class is very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
There's also some magic items here as well. And feats too. So this is the whole package. You could run an entire campaign and players could make their characters just with this book. And obviously the player's handbook for the base class if they pick an archetype.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, the players could get the vast majority of their stuff just from this book. And I think that's super cool.
It's very good, very good.
Yeah, like, I really like that. And I think when us as a sort of a company makes like I would very much like us to be able to produce something like this at some point. This is much further down the line, and Ross and Co have been doing this for a lot longer than most people have, and they're only now starting to sort of, now that they've gone sort of to a proper paid model on the DMs Guild, they're only starting to make money as opposed to lose money, and I'm very happy for them because they make some really great stuff. As for the races, there are sort of obviously everything in here is deeply rooted in Japanese mythology and culture, which it's blended very well with D&D. Whereas when people try to do this, it usually goes very poorly and it doesn't blend at all. And they're just like, hey, this is monster and this stuff. It doesn't really work. But in this scenario, it does, and I really like it. There are quite a few races, and so I think we should just kind of like sort of touch on a couple of them, mm-hmm. and the ones that we kind of have a bit more to say about. There is a dwarf subrace called the Kurobakuru. I nailed that in one. I'm very proud of myself.
Now we find out we got the pronunciation completely wrong.
It's basically all vowels. If I got that wrong, it's Japan's fault. Okay, it's Japan's fault. They get, whilst I personally feel they're probably not very strong, they're kind of, the features they get are kind of weak. Specifically their frightened rampage. Like when it's useful, it's super great, but I feel like, I don't know, giving them like a tool proficiency or something is kind of in order. They also look kind of cool as well. They're a bit taller than dwarves, a bit thinner, and they've got like big crazy hair. Like I like it. I like them. You have anything?
No, I've got nothing particular to say. I quite like them because I'm not too keen on dwarves as a whole. I don't think I've ever made a dwarf.
You haven't?
Out of my entire upwards of 20 characters, I've never made a dwarf.
Yeah.
But I do really like these.
Yeah. I think it adds a little bit of extra flavour to the dwarves, and depending on what I'm sort of adding per se, like what I'm doing, I would totally consider like making these for something or adding these because I quite like them. I quite like them. There's also there is a Koatoa race, which I think is super cool. Like, whilst I think the Koatoa are a little silly, I
love them just because they are silly. I love them.
Like the Koatoa are very silly, but like them as a concept is actually really interesting, and having them as a race that's actually quite cool is really cool. There's amphibians. They can like you can enhance your senses magically. It's cool. It's cool. I quite like them. The next race that I'm going to mention, whilst I personally have zero problems with it, I feel like there's a certain AAA video game company that may or may not have a copyright on this name. And whilst I fully trust Ross that he has done his research and has found that they do not in fact have a patent on this name, the fact that there is a Pandaren panda race makes me think whether there is one. And whilst what they've done is largely, outside of it being a panda race called Pandarans, is largely different to my understanding of, whilst I've personally never played World of Warcraft and know almost nothing about its lore. Hell, I've never even played any of the Warcraft games. I believe these guys are quite different. They can also roll, and I think that's amazing.
That's pretty cool.
It's pretty cool.
I would play one of these.
Yeah. Whilst I fully trust that there isn't a patent or a copyright on the name Pandaren for a panda race in a fantasy type setting, I don't know. Like, I'm a little scared for OAP over here. Just a little scared. I think the races, there are two more races on here, and these are the ones that I have the most problem with. And I've mentioned this to you many times before, in regards to some of the races from the base game as well. There is the Spirit Folk and the Hunger Yokai. And these fill an avenue that I am now officially going to name human pluses. Like, I made that up literally on the spot. I was going to say human but not, but that sounds stupid.
Sounds stupid, yeah.
Yeah. Human plus, in which they look, sound, and act a decent bit like humans, but they just have special magic powers. That I personally am really not a fan of. I see why people do it, and I see why people like it. Personally, really against it. And I think there's not just in cases of this, like there are a lot of races, classes, or races, sorry, from both other media and especially from like actual D&D, like the books and stuff, that I'm very sort of like...
Because you don't like the Azamar for this reason.
Yeah, the Azamar are the same thing. Like the Azamar, Ganassi to a degree, like not really a fan. I whilst some of these races, I feel, especially the Hunger Yokai, could be improved drastically because what effectively these guys are. The Hunger Yokai is, I don't know what hunger means, but to my knowledge, yokai means like beast or monster or something to that sort of spectrum. Beast or monster, something similar. They're kind of like pseudo lycanthropes. Kind of. They depending on your subclass, you can be anything from like a tanuki to a kitsune, or like a monkey, or I think there's a cat as well. I'm not sure off the top of my head. There's a dog, a fish. Is that a rat? It is a rat. And you take on this sort of hybrid form. I feel like they would be a lot more interesting if the hybrid form was their form, and they were just, hey, I'm a Hunger Yokai, but I'm a rat, so I've got a big nose, and then I've got a stupid mustache, and I'm really sketchy. Like, not a fan. Like,
I don't have an issue with them, honestly speaking, but then again, I don't have an issue with half the things you have an issue with.
This is very true.
I quite like them. I think they're kind of.
I think them as a concept would be super cool, but I'm personally not a fan of like a human plus races where it's just kind of like I look like a human.
A human, but slightly different.
I'm a human just with special powers. Yeah. Like not there are a lot of there are a lot of examples of this both in D&D and in like other people's homebrew where I'm just sort of like no. I don't like just be a human, and if you want to say that you can do this or that and the other, just talk to your DM about it. Like. It's just it is very much just a personal gripe. These things are very well designed, and aside from that, if I sort of ignore that, I do like them. But that is very much just a personal gripe that I have with the spirit folk especially, but the Hunger Yokai less so.
Yeah.
There is also a sub-race of the Hunger Yokai, which I believe is the Kitsune one, or no, it's the Tanuki one, in which you can turn into inanimate objects, and there is very literally a picture of a chair with a Tanuki tail and ears.
And it's freaking amazing.
That honestly, that almost makes up for the rest of the stuff I don't like about this race, strictly because there is a chair with a tanuki tail and ears, because that is fucking hilarious and I love it. It's so stupid, it's brilliant. So the archetypes, we have talked about this like in private, like prior to doing this when I showed you all this. We don't have like an enormous amount to say about all of them, so we're just going to sort of go through each one individually and give sort of a brief something or other. First one is a barbarian path of the sumo. First sense alone, love it. Like,
yeah, I love it.
I don't even need to look into the details. If you do, you find that they are basically an unarmed fighting grapple based barbarian, which works really well because that's how sumo wrestling works.
I did originally say that I thought it would work better as a monk class. However, I do agree that it works very well as a barbarian class, the way they've done it. It does work very well. But it could also work well as a monk class, I think. Yeah,
like as a monk monastic tradition, it would make sense, but I think barbaric path or whatever they're called, really, really like it. Like, sumo, super cool. I gotta work out how to pronounce this one. College of the Haikyoku.
We apologise for any mispronunciation. That is all.
Yeah, that is all. This is a bard college, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't be called a college. Across the board, it's interesting having like this kind of spiritual, you can do like spiritual performances. What I'm not really a fan of is that you have to forcibly blind yourself to play this class, and whilst you do get given like a pseudo blind sight, I still feel like it's sort of, that is kind of I feel like it's kind of unnecessary. Obviously, this is a cultural thing, kind of blinding oneself for the spiritual performance and stuff. But
however, I really like this because as someone who has wanted to play a character who is blind but has stopped themselves, because it's kind of looked down upon now. It's kind of seen as a stereotypical thing to play a blind character.
Because when people do it, everybody plays a monk who is just Lee Sin from League of Legends.
Yeah. I really like this because it gives a different variation on it, and it actually gives you the opportunity to play a character with this type of disability, and it works very well. I really like it. I think there should be more classes or subclasses like this.
I think my problem with it is it's not a player choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like because if a player who doesn't want to do this wants to play this class, they're going to have to put up with it. And I really am not a fan of that. Like thematically restricting players just because of the race or class that they want to pick. I think that's really stupid. Mechanically, I really like this thing, but it's just that first feature where it's you relinquish sight, yada yada yada. Not a fan. I would say I think that, again that's very much a personal thing. Like I would not want my character to be changed thematically by my choice of class. I want to be able to have total control over that.
Yeah.
So if I want to play this subclass, I don't want to have to be, I guess I'm blind now, or I'm choosing to be blind, or whatever. No. It's the rest of it is cool, but I think that's just that specifically is no.
Yeah.
The next one is a cleric domain, and whilst I personally will not be adding this because I have 1,000,001 cleric domains, I have 20 something because there's way too fucking many. This one is actually super awesome. It is
very good. It is
very good. If I didn't already have my own elemental cleric things that I was using, I would swap them for this. This is a balance of the elements sort of type domain called the Godai domain. I can pronounce that one. In which you can shift both the spells that you gain from this class and the features that you gain and the resistances that you gain once you reach second, or you can use your channel divinity to just change, and you can change what spells you get. So if you are attuned to Aether and you don't need comprehend languages, you can swap to water and get Ice Knife, which is one of the best first level spells. Ice Knife is super good. Or you can change to air for Featherfall and stuff like that. I really, really like it. I think this is very interesting. The next one is for the Draconite, which is a class designed by OAP, in which you have a dragon companion. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. I have not read into it too much. I haven't I've looked into it a little bit, but I've not read it through and through, so I don't know it all too well. But this one is the Bond of the Spirit, in which you get a spirit dragon that can deal thunder damage, which I think is super cool.
It's very cool.
It has a booming voice. That's really awesome. You get key points in this subclass, which I think is interesting, which you can spend on doing a variety of sort of unique things to the Bond. You have a feature called Dragon Fist, in which you can basically have your dragon do extra damage and stuff, which is super cool. And I feel like there's not a lot to talk about this one because literally nothing.
I know nothing about the Draconite, absolutely nothing.
And I know fairly little. Again, if you are interested in the thought of playing somebody who has a dragon companion, go and look at the Draconite. You might like the subclass. I know there are several for the Draconite, and I know for a fact that as they reach certain milestones in sort of sales, OAP like to put out different things to produce, or different extra things for these classes. So the more people download them, the more content they get, which I think is really neat. So you might find that they release more as the Draconite gets more popular, and I think they're on gold, bronze or silver medal at the moment. So, and there's been a couple out already. So there's going to be more. There's going to be more, to my understanding.
The next class I really like.
Yes.
Purely because it allows me to do something that I have not been able to do since the start of me playing D&D, which was 2-3 years ago now.
Coming up on 3 years. It's about 2.5 years at the moment.
I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this. It's a druid's subclass called the Circle of the Onmyoji?
Onmyoji. Something like that. It's ONMYOJI. Myoji. If you know how to pronounce that using proper Japanese pronunciation, please feel free to correct us, because we don't know.
We're sorry.
We are very sorry. We apologize to Japan and the people who speak and understand Japanese for how bad we are.
Or just have a basic level of pronunciation and understanding, because I have no knowledge of how to pronounce Japanese words, and
I have a little bit, not very much.
Very sorry. I listened to the dubbed animes. I'm sorry. I'm ashamed. But anyway, this class I really like because it allows you to have a familiar without being a warlock
or
a wizard. Because that is the main reason why I like this, because I've never played a warlock or a wizard yet that have been able to have a familiar. It's been something that I've wanted to do for years, ever since we started playing D&D. I have not managed to do it, but this is a druid subclass that allows you to do it.
Yeah, and it actually makes your familiar useful at later levels. It can cast guidance on you, and at later levels it can do it as a bonus, and that's super good. And guidance is actually a really good cantrip. You get access to a few extra divination spells. This is legitimately my favorite subclass. I really like this. And at later levels, you can also summon these Komainus, which are very cool-looking dog creatures. For those who don't know, to my understanding, they are the little lion but not really statues that you sometimes see. They have the big lion heads with the big open mouths and the crazy eyes and the big crazy manes. The Komainus are and they sit on the. I think those are the ones where one mouth is open and the other one is closed.
I can't remember.
I feel as though that is.
I don't know enough about the culture.
I feel as though that is what these are, though I may well be wrong. The next one is the Urawashi, which is I can definitely pronounce that. That is a fighter subclass. This one, it's interesting. You kind of just take like a commanding position, and that's kind of really it, to be honest. Now I feel like the Battle Master kind of covers that a little better, but I don't know.
I don't have any particular problem.
I don't have a problem with it. I just think it's I don't know. I don't really know how to describe what I feel about this, because I don't dislike it, but I'm not super stoked about it, either. Like, I'm just gonna, it's okay. Way of the Sohai is a monk monastic tradition in which you are a mounted monk.
I really like that concept.
On paper, it sounds super cool, and in practice, it seems interesting. It's not necessarily something I personally would play, but it does seem cool.
I think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it's quite interesting. It's not something I personally would play, but it's certainly not something I would have anything against.
I think the reason I find it interesting is because you don't really see mounted combatants very much. Like, I've certainly not in any of the games that we've played. We've never been mounted before.
Yeah.
Whereas this is an entire subclass based around that concept, which I think would give players more opportunity to take advantage of the mounted ability.
Yeah. That's cool. It's cool. I really like it, and the features are actually pretty cool. I like this one. Paladin Oath of the Mountain. This is probably my second favorite. This one is super cool. You protect, obviously. It's kind of a given. You are constantly journeying. You ignore exhaustion until you hit 6. And for those who don't know, reaching 6 exhaustion kills you instantly. So up to that point, they just don't care until they just drop dead, which I think is really kind of funny, but at the same time is super cool. These guys can just walk forever, which I think is really awesome.
It's also kind of scary as well.
Yeah.
Because if you're being hunted down by something like this,
you
know that these things can just keep going.
That's cool. Yeah, and the art is also really awesome. You're looking at like a Goliath-looking dude in big stone armor with a massive shield with a mountain on it. It's super cool.
I mean, the art for most of the things that we've seen...
the art for most of it is like super great, but like this in particular is like, this is awesome.
I personally prefer the art for the Way of the Sohai. I think that art was very, very well done. I like that one. I like that one a lot.
That's cool. Yeah, I just scrolled up and had a look at it. It's interesting. I quite like it.
Yeah, the art for everything in this has been
very,
amazing
very good.
so far.
Very, very good job to I believe there was several individuals who did this art, and good job to all of those. And if it was one guy, extra props, because you did all of it, and it's all really good. This is probably a contester for one of the better ones here, is the Ashagaru Ranger. This takes inspiration from The Matrix and that other movie with the cool action scenes, the one that no one watched. The one with the sense offenders and gun cutter, because that's a feature that this thing has. I forget what it's called. I know it's a movie that no one watched. Future me will come in and edit in what movie that is, most likely. Psst, hey, it's Equilibrium. But you get bullet time. You can matrix it up. You can dodge bullets. You can attack with your ranged weapons. I love this one. I really do. Honestly, it's super cool.
This is one of the ones that I actually have an issue with. It's mainly a personal thing. There is nothing wrong with this subclass whatsoever. Like, it's very well done. I just have a little bit of an issue about rangers being able to... I get it, but I feel like this would work better as a gunslinger subclass.
That's the thing, is gunslinger...
I know that gunslinger is not in the main book or anything. It's not one of the original subclasses even. I just have a little bit of an issue with it because it's not a traditional ranger thing to have a gun. I just have a little bit of an issue with it because it uses guns and it's for a ranger. I'm just
any ranger that doesn't use bows though, you automatically
it's not just bows. It's not just bows. Like,
or crossbows.
You know what I mean? It's just just frustrates me slightly.
I think your problem comes with your misinterpretation of the word ranger.
It does, yes. That's why I said it was purely a personal thing, because this subclass is very cool. It's very good. It's literally just a personal thing.
Yeah, I think this is just from a thing standpoint, super cool. Whilst you are right, if the gunslinger was a base class, this would work a lot better. But it's not. And the ranger is the next best thing, and I think this is super cool. The next one is the shinobi rogue. I also think this one is a little clunky in the way that it works, and it's obviously a lot of it is based off of ninjutsu magic, like that ninjas supposedly had, or obviously a lot of the magic, air quotes, that ninjas used to be able to do was actually just ninjas were just really smart guys. They knew how to make things that would let them run on shallow water like it wasn't there. They knew how to make smoke bombs and darts and stuff like that. But in this, they're kind of playing it up like ninjas are actually magic. And that's kind of cool. I actually kind of like that. And also the mechanics of it, a little clunky. Still super cool. And I do like it a lot. It's very interesting.
I don't think I'm allowed to have an opinion on any rogue subclasses, seeing as I've been banned from playing rogues. Because I make too many of them.
That is
very
true.
I do really like this one, but I love anything to do with the rogue. So...
that is very true. It's very, very true.
It's not my fault. Rogues are just the best class. It's not my fault. Next to Sorcerer. Speaking of Sorcerer...
Yep. The Kitsunetsuki is a trickster spirit, specifically a kitsune blessed sorcerer, in which you get trickster magic. You can do all kinds of crazy stuff, and some of it is pretty fucking cool. Like, you can turn into a fox. You can turn into various different creatures. You can cast clairvoyance. You can do detect thoughts. It's kind of interesting. I like it as like a sort of a trickster spirity type thing, and I think it's very interesting. At later levels, you do also get access to Find Familiar, which I also, and you get a Will-O-Wisp. You can take a Will-O-Wisp, which is like a CR2 creature, as your familiar, which I think is actually super cool. I really like it.
Coming back to it again, I don't get to play characters that have familiars very often due to the restrictions on it, so this is another reason why I like it. Just giving me more opportunity to have a familiar. Thank you.
I think I like the class and I like the concept. Though I think if I were to sort of add it to my big bank of sorcerer and just class stuff in general, I'd probably make it more general, so it's not just, it's a kitsune. It's just a trickster spirit in general, just because I feel like the especially in the case of sorcerer subclasses in general, but sorcerer's origins especially, being kind of as general as possible helps thematically make your character a lot more interesting, because it's like people are more likely to pick this if they can just say, oh yeah, my trickster spirit is, I don't know, he's a spirit of trickery from the Nine Hells, or he's from the Feywild. He's like a little Fey trickster spirit, and he's, I don't know, he like possessed me when I was a baby, or something like that.
It would be better to give the players themselves even more choice in how they structure their gift giver. I couldn't think of the right word for that on the spot. Like, you know what I mean?
In terms of like the kitsune in general, this would also work as like a warlock thing, which I kind of like. Just like a general concept would also work so well as a warlock. But on the whole, really, really like it. I think, again, sort of being very general with subclasses is quite important, but obviously to maintain the sort of cultural and thematic emulation of Japan, kind of had to narrow it down a bit. So I totally see why they've done it. I'm just personally like, it should be a bit more general.
Mm-hmm.
The Juragumo Queen Warlock Patron. Whilst, again, Warlock patrons need to be kind of general. This is why I have a lot of problems with like some of the homebrew warlock patrons that people make, where it's a very specific entity that is this, that, and the other, and he feels this way and does this. It's like, no, it's kind of boring. This one still adds a lot of very interesting features. For example, you can turn into a terrifying Drider Spider monstrosity at level 1.
Which is always good. That's always fun.
Always fun, yeah. So that's interesting. You can seduce people, which is
always interesting.
Yeah,
especially for many of my characters.
Yup. You can do a shit ton of poison damage at later levels with kind of all warlock patrons. Their 14th level feature, their final feature, should be the big shebang power. Yeah. Like it's time to unleash my special move.
Oh
god. I think fiends get hurled through hell.
Yeah.
And I think the only one that doesn't have the kind of, time for my special move, I think is the Great Old One, because they can just make slaves, which is also super cool.
That's pretty cool, that's still pretty cool.
Oh yeah, it's super cool. It's still like a special move, but it's not as sort of like, it's time for my special attack.
You've said that way too many times now.
Mm-hmm.
You need to stop.
I need to continue. But yeah, I quite like this, just as like from a mechanical standpoint, I really like it. And the final one is the Wizard Brahmin. Personally, I feel very strongly about wizard subclasses and people making more of them. Anyone, for that matter, making more of them, not because I feel like there would be too many, but because I feel like the wizard covers all areas. You've got the 8 schools of magic. Realistically, do you need any more?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's just a personal thing. A lot of people really like stuff like the other wizard subclasses that exist, like on especially from Unearthed Arcana. I think the Lawmaster is one of the ones that people really like. I know there's another couple. There's a Blade Singer, I want to say it's called Blade something or other. Personally, really don't like them, like any of them, because I feel like you've got this really nice little niche bubble. The wizard, you could just pick up the player's handbook and bam, all the wizard stuff you could ever want is there.
Yeah.
Whereas people seem to just like, let's add more. It's like, no, they've covered all of that. No, why would you do that?
I don't have an issue with there being more wizard subclasses. Like that's me saying that. I'm usually the one that has an issue with there being more things.
Yeah, I think like realistic. My only issue with it is because it's so neat and tidy. The way the wizard on its own, most of its subclasses across the board are really interesting, and almost all of them are like some of the most balanced subclasses in the game, with the exception of the Evocation Wizard. That motherfucker is OP as hell. Like holy shit. But like I don't know. But mechanically speaking, this thing is actually super cool. And whilst I would much rather, I think you were the one that mentioned this originally, make a proper quarter or third casting monk, and giving it some of these features, I think would be a lot better.
I think like it would work better as a monk subclass, just a monk that is more focused on magic than physical abilities.
Definitely. So yeah, that's I don't know. I think that's just
But I do love the concept behind it.
Yeah, the concept is super cool. Something else in here that I mentioned earlier in Honor and Devotions is this new class, the Yojimbo. Now, this thing, to my understanding, is based on the original class by OAP, the Samurai, which I believe after, I want to say Xanathar's Guide to Everything came out, there was a Samurai Fighter subclass that was added, and they were like, hey, what should we rename it? Because obviously they needed to rename their full class, because it had kind of been taken by Wizards, and really, you can't really argue with Wizards, because they make the game. So after a few months of them making Honor and Devotions, the Yojimbo is now in here, revitalized with a lot of content. It is. I mentioned this when we were last time when we were talking about the Vigilante, a class with more subclasses. I'm automatically gonna like.
Yeah.
And the Vigilante only had 2, which is totally understandable because most of the ones from the Player's Handbook only had 2 or 3, unless you're a wizard, in which case you got a choice between 8. This one, let's just have a count here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 7, and it comes with those just on its own, and that makes me very happy. Obviously, as this thing is like a samurai, it's very much based around honor, hence Honor and Devotions. One of their things is called Honor and Service, one of their little flavory things at the start of the class. And they strike a very interesting balance between being a fighter and being a monk, in which they are very much based around being in medium or heavy armor and swinging martial weapons around. But at the same time, they have an interesting and quite cool point system that they use to fuel various features. Sort of like the Vigilante, I also say they have a D10 hit die, proficient in all armor. They have simpler martial weapons, stuff like that. Very similar to a fighter at first glance. And you look at their sort of class table, and you see stances and balance points. And stances, you start at level 1 with the feature Kame, in which you can take a battle stance. There's some very, very interesting ones in here, which we will go over later on. They are all quite interesting. Some of them let you cut through air. 2 of them let you do that. There's others that give you resistance, some that let you disarm people, some that give you movement, so on and so forth. Like they're all very interesting. The balance points, I think, is pretty much the shining star, in that you start at level 2 with 2 balance points. With the feature Sheishin, is you get the balance points. You can split them into positive or negative balance points. So you could have, I think you can have either 1 positive and 1 negative, or you'd have 2 negative or 2 positive. I'm not sure if you can do those second 2, or whether you have to sort of split them as evenly as possible. I'm unsure, because I'm not sure whether it specifies. I forget off the top of my head. But the feature is very interesting. It can use to fuel stances and do different things. You can perform a negative or a positive channel. It can fuel various other class features as well. The base class itself, very simple. 5th level, you get extra attack. And at 15th level, you get a 3rd attack, which I think is kind of interesting. Drawing a parallel between fighter again.
Can always use more attacks.
It still doesn't really step on the fighter's toes too much, because the fighter gets 4 attacks, these guys only get 3. And the fighter gets its 3rd attack at 11th level. It's not for another 4 levels where the Yojimbo is going to get its 3rd as well. So some people might have a problem with that. Personally, I don't feel like it's stepping on the fighter's toes too much. Across the board, very interesting class. They're obviously based on wisdom, and they either use strength or dex as their weapon, as their weapon stat. Fairly straightforward. You pick a Bushido code at 3rd level, which is your subclass. And like I said before, there's 7 of them. It's pretty nice. A lot of the features themselves are kind of sort of self-explanatory, and I think I will say up front the class is very well balanced. So I know they put a lot of work into making sure their stuff is balanced, and they do a very good job of it as well, which I really like. I think we should probably just jump straight into the Bushido codes, because I think they're really the star here, because there's some really good ones. There's the Code of Kyoto, which is the archer one, basically. And I had a similar problem with the Nightmare Tactics of Vigilante, in which limiting specific items and equipment to a class in a very overly specific way. There is a very specific type of bow that uses strength as its stat, which in of itself doesn't really make much sense, because you might be able to draw the string of a bow all the way back and not break a sweat. Doesn't mean you can hit someone with it. So I think that I can see why they've done it, so that you can still use strength to wield like a great sword or a long sword or whatever. But at the same time, it doesn't really make any sense.
I think this is one of those things that you would have to take up with your DM if you were trying to play one of these in a setting where you'd have to converse with your DM and find an explanation as to why this specific subclass is the only people able to use this weapon.
The weapon in question is a Yumi, and this is a traditional Japanese bow. It's effectively a great bow. It is a bow designed specifically for the wielder to be as big as they are. I understand that because these things are specifically designed for the wielder, that they would be proficient in them, but at the same time, there is no way that you can try and tell me that these same people that make these Yumis can't just talk to anyone and just say, hey, I'm just going to take a tape measure. Okay, you're 5'11". Right, let's make a bow that's 5 feet 11 inches. Let's go. Let's do it. Make a Yumi. Do it. So, personally, very much not a fan of...
I don't mind it. I just think it's something that you would need to come up with a reason for, just to add like flavour. It would help with the flavour of the setting as well, doing this.
That is true. But I'd either say make the Yumi like a special bow if I were to personally add the Yumi, I would make it so that it is a dex weapon, and to wield it correctly, similar to how some armor works, you would have to have a strength score of a specific value. Like, say, I don't know, 14 or 15. Otherwise, you can't wield this bow properly, and all attacks are made at disadvantage or something like that. That's just how I would do it. But again, some people won't have an issue with this, and I feel that's just that's as I mentioned with the Vigilante last time. I think this is just a personal gripe that I have. The features you get in themselves though are quite interesting. You can make melee weapon attacks with the Yumi, which is interesting. You can treat ranged weapon attacks with your Yumi as if they were gaining bonuses from your stances. So like anyone that references melee weapon attack, even if you're using a ranged attack, still counts, which I think is really awesome actually. That's actually like a really useful. And you can cast Conjure Barrage, and all of the codes at 18th level get access to a special advanced stance that only they can use. And a lot of them are pretty nice. This one allows you to spend balance points to make a number, basically attack everyone that you can see, which I think is super cool.
It's very good. It's very cool.
It's really cool. The next code is code of the Hebi or the Hibai or Hebai. I don't know how to pronounce that one. But it's code of the serpent, I know, or snake, or something to that degree. I know that to be the case, as it's all about dragons, and it's also mentioned further up that's what that means. Also, fun fact for those who are either looking at this thing or for you, the art for the code of the Hibai or the Hebi, no idea, is the original art for the samurai.
Oh, okay.
There used to be, I think it still is, on if you buy the original samurai on. Whilst I'm unsure of how different it is to the Yojimbo, if you buy the original samurai, it's got this art on the cover. Or even if you just go look at it on the DM's Guild. You can speak Draconic. You can convert positive points to negative balance points, which I think is kind of interesting, kind of doing that kind of thing. You can cast Elemental Bane. You can do extra elemental damage, which I think is really cool. And with your special stance of the dragon, you can unleash an elemental storm, which is f***ing cool as hell.
It's always cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. This is my favourite one, Code of the Kirin. in which it works like a much more interesting and probably like mechanically useful way of the 4 elements. Especially with the changes that I personally made to way of the 4 elements, in that it's kind of like you prepare an attunement instead of just knowing like 3 of them or whatever. You just prepare some, which I found was a lot more interesting. And something I'll probably do with this one as well. It is very similar in design, and I think anybody who knows anything about the way the 4 elements, it works very much like that, except with much more interesting spells, including Find Steed and Find Greater Steed, which, that's awesome, because the Find Steed is a cool-ass spell. And the fact that somebody other than a paladin can get it, even if it is at a slightly later level, to my understanding, if I just have a quick look. You could cast Find Steed. Oh, no. Yeah, 7th level. You can cast it slightly later than a paladin. 10, because I think paladins get theirs at 5th. And whilst there's not a huge amount else to say here, aside from the fact that you can cast a bunch of spells with your spiritual disciplines, super cool. Really like it. Code of the Kirin, 100% is my favorite. Code of the Oni is basically you have some demon stuff.
This one's my favorite.
Yeah, you can do demon things. You have a demonic weapon, which acts a little bit like the Eldritch Knight's weapon pond, which is cool. I really like that. You 7th level, you can undergo an infernal transformation and be extra spooky, though you do have a chance of smacking random people, and those random people can be your friends. So be careful. You can summon a greater demon at 13th level, which is pretty nice. Yeah. It's pretty cool. And when you do your fancy stance, you can make your demon transformation extra spicy and give you a bunch of resistances, make it so you won't accidentally hit your friends, and you can regain negative balance points by murdering people.
This one is definitely my favourite purely because I just love anything to do with fiends. Probably why tieflings are my favourite. My favourite race.
I'm a big fan of this one. This is my second favourite. Kirin is my favourite, but this one is definitely my second favourite. Code of the Ronin is kind of it is to the Yojimbo what the champion is to fighter. It's very simple, baseline, great for new players, like new players who want something simple that they can just look at and say, I understand this, and just wrap their head around immediately. And this is effectively that. It's actually very similar to it as well. You get skill proficiency, you crit on a 19 or a 20, and it has a 7th, or in the case of the champion, a 10th level feature that is really terrible. Oh no, there is more. Okay, no, it's actually kind of terrible. Actually, yeah, it's not very strong. The 7th,
not very good.
The 7th level feature is just reading it. You double your carrying capacity, and you can spend 2 of your balance points to gain advantage on a check against being grappled or restrained. It's pretty weak. It's pretty weak.
For a 7th level feature, yeah, I'd say.
For a 7th level feature, very, very weak. But just as like a base thing, I imagine a lot of edgelords are going to go for this one, and new players who just want something simple, because the Yojimbo already has a lot of mechanics going on. They just, this is simple and it fits my character. Sure, I'll take this one. And also, their final stance lets them crit on an 18, which is cool. And you can... It's effectively... Oh god. You can, as a bonus action, attack anyone within 10 feet that you choose.
Any number of creatures.
Within 10
feet.
Yeah, that's super cool. Like, I think...
But it's a separate attack roll for each target, so it's not as bad. Yeah,
still pretty crazy though. That's insane damage output. But it does cost most of your balance points to do it. So, Code of the Tosotsu is you have like some leadership stuff, which I think is kind of cool. The art here is also really nice.
It was very
it's a very sort nice. Of leader-looking dude sitting in a chair, and there's a... Oh no, it looked like an old man from a beard with a distance. From the distance I'm looking at it, but it's actually a woman.
It's a big mix-up there.
A big mix-up. I mean, I'm kind of having to peer over where the mic is and look from a distance, and it did kind of look like an old man, and the shadow looked like a beard. But no, that's just her nose, and the light on the side of her face. I apologize, artist.
It's very nice art from
It's very nice art from where you are sitting, in which you can see it properly. The mic. I'm having to constantly look around the mic because our setup is really shitty.
It's trash.
It's trash. So I'm like, is that an old... Oh, no, it's a woman. Okay.
The art is really nice. It's very detailed as well.
Super cool. You can calm emotions, which I think is kind of fun. You can frighten people. You can do a thing where you balance your... You basically swap. So if you have... say you've got 4 positive balance points and 1 negative balance point, you can swap. So you've got 4 negative and 1 positive. It's super cool. I really like that. And your stance of leadership lets you do all kinds of really cool stuff as well, including giving everybody around you advantage on attack rolls, which I think is pretty cool. The Code of the Yosa is the final one in which you can heal people and you can convert negative to positive balance points.
I really like this one purely because it just gives you more variation on playing a healer. You don't, like with this class, you don't have to be a cleric or a paladin in order to do healing in this one, and that's why I like it. I like this one a lot because of that.
Yeah.
Because there are times where sometimes when you're creating a party and the support role is not filled, it's kind of just a bit like, oh, well, I guess I'll play a cleric or a paladin. With this one, it just gives me more choice in order to play a healer, which is always good. I love choices when it comes to healers because I don't like being restrained to just clerical paladin.
I mean, there are other ones that you can take, but realistically, if you want a class that can dish out big heals, clerical paladin or go home, basically. There's very few other classes. Like druids get mass cure wounds.
Yeah, but it's like that's one spell. Yeah.
That's they get healing word, they get cure wounds, they get mass cure wounds.
A mass healing word, I think.
No, they don't.
Do you not get mass healing word?
Nope, that's just a cleric thing.
Oh, I thought Lily had mass healing word. Oh well.
I don't think she does.
But yeah,
Lily is a character, not a player.
But I just like the fact that it gives me a lot more choice when it comes to playing a healer, which is always needed, instead of just being like, oh, I'll play this class and just have one healing spell, I guess.
Yeah. And you can actually do a decent bit of healing. And your sort of ultimate special stance move, where you spend 5 balance points, you can roll 10d6 and restore up to that number of hit points, divided amongst the creatures around you.
Which is very, very good.
That's pretty nice.
Very good.
That's pretty nice. It's not crazy powerful, but it's good. Especially since you're already like a powerhouse in terms of damage. And you can just go, oh, hey, I'm just going to use my action. I'm just going to do a bunch of healing. Hey. That's pretty fun. As for the stances, they do a variety of different things, including letting you cut through air for ranged attacks, which is fucking cool as hell. You can... knock people prone. You can I'm not going to go through all the stances because we would just be here for ages, and we've already been here forever talking just about this class, which is fine because the class is really, really good.
It's very cool.
My only problem is that there are 2 stances that are very similar in which you cut through air to make slashy things. Aside from that, really no problem with these stances. They're all super cool. I really like them all. Including the advanced stances as well. But Yojimbo, on the whole, really solid class. I have very few problems with this thing as a whole. Realistically, that's quite uncommon. I'll often find... often my process of finding classes is I find a class I like, and even if I only like 60% of the class, I'll take that 60% and I'll change the rest of it. In this case, this is literally aside from the very minor things that I've mentioned thus far,
I like all of it. Anyway.
Yeah. Aside from the very, very minor stuff that I've already mentioned, this class is super great. I really, really like it. What did we give the Vigilante? I think you gave it an 8 and I gave it a 7.
I think so, yeah.
Or a 7.5 or something like that.
Going off the top of my head, yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to start recording this, I think. Whenever we look at a new class, we'll give it a rating and we'll have a Hall of Fame.
I'm going to give this one a 7 purely because it doesn't appeal to me as much aesthetically. I don't usually go for fighter classes like this. Other than that, it's very, very well made. It's just personal opinion on the 7. I'm gonna say this gets a 9. 9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. It is very, very rare that I find a class that I look at and I have so few problems with that I might as well not have any. And OAP seem to have a good track record in this regard. Like the Odic and this are two classes that I've just taken one look at and said yes. And this is like I said, this is the second time they've done it. This is super great. Still not as good as the Odic, because the Odic is the shit. And seriously, like if this does not appeal to you for one reason or another, go look at the Odic, because I guarantee to you
the Odic will.
It will. It's super great. But
I have to say, of everything, because we've read through this entire thing now, we've read through the entirety of Honor and Devotions in our own time or on here. I've liked all of it. I haven't disliked any of it, and I like the Odic as well. I haven't looked at so much of their other stuff because I've only looked at what you've shown me.
There's actually a lot of it that I've not really looked at too much either. Like I know for a fact that Draken, I feel at least compelled to have a look into it now, because I feel like I downloaded it I got it on the DM's Guild a little while ago, like probably like a year ago now, and just had a very brief skim or whatever. But I don't think I ever actually really looked into it at all. So I feel compelled to now. I feel compelled to have a proper look into it.
I feel like these guys are definitely someone to keep an eye on in terms of content.
Definitely.
Because
I have been for a long time.
Yeah, I know. But everything I've seen so far has been very good and very well done.
Even the stuff that I'm not super like, this isn't my kind of thing, I'm like, this, people will love this.
Yeah, like, you can still tell it's well made, and other people will.
Even if it's something that I'm just like, it's not really my kind of thing. It's like, but it's a lot of the stuff they do is super great, and I highly recommend you check this stuff out, because I think the way that they do thematic stuff is really, really great, because across the board it's super good, and the way that their ability to balance stuff, I don't know how they play test their stuff, but they do it very well, clearly, because the stuff comes out and it's like there's
super balanced.
Very it's
little
like
unbalancing.
I could not really see any real issue with this. Obviously, I've not personally played it, and nobody near me has played it. So if I were to find something, I would change it, of course. But that, like, this is super, super great. Like, so this averages to an 8. So I think I think we should sort of, you give a rating, I give a rating, we average it out, and we put it on a scoreboard. So at the top, Yojimbo is at the top with an 8, and the Vigilante is a 7.5, because I give it a 7, you gave it an 8.
I think in terms of Honor and Devotions as a whole, looking at the entire collection, I would definitely give it a 9.
I would say, as a whole, I would say 8. Strictly because there are like actual parts of some of the earlier stuff that I'm actively like, nah, not really. But again, a lot of that is just a personal thing. It is well designed and it is very well made, including the stuff that I've said sort of no to. With the only one I would say actively sort of would like is not just kind of a personal thing. I would say being the blindness of the Bardic College, I think is the only thing that I could actively say is like, I think like this isn't just kind of a me thing. I feel like a lot of people would have an issue with this, just kind of forcing someone into that thing. The rest of it is just like I am personally very much against human plus races.
Yeah, whereas I love them.
Yeah, like
I love the Azamar, I love the Ganassi and everything. I love what these guys have done with their races and everything, which is why I've scored it a 9 as a whole.
Yeah, it's good. It's like, I'm like very, very glad I spent money on this. I spent my own personal DM's Guild money on this, and I'm very glad that I did, because it's very much worth the money. For the Yojimbo alone, it was worth the money, but for the rest of it as well, a lot of this stuff I'm gonna be putting on my big bank of stuff. The Onmyoji, the Arawashi, I forget the Matrix Ranger.
Oh yeah.
Matrix Ranger, the Onmyoji Druid, and there was another one that I have promptly forgotten off the top of my head, but there is another one as well that is definitely, like, I'm not even going to think. It's just like, oh, this is going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, Honor and Devotions, really, really great. Highly recommend you check it out. It's really, really good. And I know, because I follow OAP on everything under the sun. I know they have an accursed race in the works at the moment, which
I'm looking forward to reading that one.
Yeah, it's cool. Like, we personally in our big class database, we already have our own accursed, which is likely to be very similar, but I'm sure some of the features or sort of things that they come up with will allow me to sort of add to that as well. So I'm very excited to see that. They've got, because a lot of their stuff has reached milestones, they've got a lot of stuff to create there. Sort of like extra, so like the Odic, they're going to release one or two more subclasses for it. Same goes for their various other classes. They have a race compendium in the works, including like all kinds of crazy shit. I forget what was on there, but I saw the preview of it, and I remember making a joke about them adding Zvarts from Volo's Guide to Monsters, the little yellow guys with the stupid sideburns. Honestly, I am intrigued to see what they do with it. As in the words of Ross, it wouldn't be Outlandish Adventure if they didn't do something outlandish. And
yeah, I'm really looking forward.
I am intrigued to see. I am intrigued to see what they do. I'm personally especially looking forward to more class stuff, because that's just kind of where I lean. Sort of.
Yeah, whereas I lean more towards races. I love races.
Like
the more variety, the better.
Mm. I think as a DM, and kind of like my thing is like, do I have to work these guys into my setting thematically? I like them slightly less now, but no.
But I'm really looking forward to seeing more content from these guys, because
I've been following their stuff for a while. Super, super great.
Yeah, because everything we've seen so far has been brilliant.
Super great, and look forward to seeing what they come up with next. So, there is someone I've been sort of following on Reddit for a considerable period of time. I think probably close to a year now, because the stuff he does is super, super cool. For those who don't use Reddit or are unaware of the subreddit, there is a subreddit, funnily enough, called D&D Behind the Screen, which is effectively a creation sharing tool for DMs. So DMs can share ideas, be it adventures, concepts. Behind the Screen has some good stuff on it, and it's always worth having a look, especially at some of the top posts. Some really good stuff. There's a user called DeathMcGunz with a Z, who posts relatively frequently stuff from his particularly strange D&D setting. This setting called Inside the Cage. He has created all manner of places, be it adventure locations, and like sort of pseudo dungeons. Not with maps, but sort of with like concepts. Like everything is really kind of loose, and you can really, there's lots of holes that he leaves for you to fill yourself, which is also super cool. So I figured we would go over two of his earlier creations on here, two of the ones that I have no immediate plans of stealing, because a lot of them are very stealable, especially for extra planar stuff, because there's some weird shit. So we are going to look at Cradle, where things fall from the sky, now, and probably later on in the show we're going to look at Vagstad, the Wolf City.
I just want to say, I thought of this about 5 minutes ago when we were getting up all of the text and everything for us to read about. But I want to know if the name Cradle is based off of that one nursery rhyme, Rock-a-by-Baby, where it falls from the tree. I want to know if Cradle itself will one day fall metaphorically. Because it's just something that...
Let's search the comments and see if somebody else... No one has thought of this yet.
It came to mind like 30 seconds ago where I was like, wait a minute! Who are you? Because also, like, we'll get to this later on, but there is something in this setting that cries like a baby.
They're literally called crybabies.
Exactly. So I want to know if the name Cradle, if this is the entire thing was inspired by the Rock-a-by-Baby lullaby. It's just a thought. It could not be. I could be completely insane. That's also liable. But, that makes
Sure
a lot
is.
of sense. That makes a lot of sense. But it was just a thought.
I will sort of read the opening sort of short paragraph, and then we'll kind of go over the other bits and pieces of what is in Cradle. It's less of a city and more of a church. People gather around this place, worshipping the things that fall from the sky, building temples and houses around the spot. Some live in tents or quickly built tree houses. It's a growing religion that spikes every time something falls from the sky, good or bad. So, Cradle is a religious place where things literally fall down from the sky, and we will get to the things that fall later on. But this religion, this religious group, they are called the Waybirds, and they are like self-proclaimed clerics. Very sort of, I imagine in any setting this would be seen as a very sort of blasphemous, sort of against type religion, which I find very interesting. And these Waybirds, they use little caged birds, little songbirds that sing whenever something is going to fall from the sky, and they're led by these things called blue jays. They're the ones that carry the little blue birds, and all of these kind of blue jays. There are several listed here, and their sort of motives, their secrets, and that sort of thing, which I think is also super cool. The place is defended by these guys called sirens. He gives sort of a very loose, like, oh, they have this much health, they are equipped with this, they have, this, and you roll for a kind of injury, and it's pretty cool. Like, I really like the way that this is kind of formatted. It's very kind of it's like it's kind of half written in the context of the setting, but also written in the context of kind of an onlooker, like someone who's looking in from the outside.
Yeah.
But
it's loose enough for people who want to incorporate it into their own settings. It's loose enough for them to be able to do so. It's not directly specific for the setting that it's been put into.
Yeah. I think like so it's like this the Waybirds, the Sirens, they're defenders who are super expendable and they die all the time. And there's the Blue Jays who are the leader, there's the congregation who are just kind of the general masses. And these people, they all flock in this place called Cradle where stuff falls out of the sky. Which is pretty cool. Like, that's a cool concept. And it starts to get, like, somewhat insane. Okay, no, it gets exceedingly insane once you get to the heading. So what falls from the sky? ? And they come in 3 varieties: horrors, crybabies, and treasure. Horrors are basically, they eat things. It doesn't matter what, they're going to try and eat it.
It's like me. No matter what it is, I'm going to try and eat it. You can take that in many ways. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I'm not sure if we could keep that in. I think I'm going to, just for the irony of it, but I don't know if we can keep that.
I mean, it's the truth.
It is.
I eat a lot of stuff. I eat food. I accidentally try to eat things that are not food, that I think are food. Like random bits of things that I find on my desk sometimes. I'm like, oh, that's food. It's not food.
How frequently does that happen?
More often than it should do.
Yeah, I was going to say, it must happen pretty frequently for you to be mentioning it right now.
I'm just a horror.
In every conceivable way.
Exactly.
I think like the horrors on their own are just like, you read that first bit and you're just like, oh, they're just big weird beast things, right? No, they're not. He gives you actually a rundown on how to make your own horror. So you look. It says, look at the object on your left. So I look at the object on my left.
Me? It's either me or the table.
I feel like this is getting into a political territory here.
Am I an object, Jack?
No. This is getting too political. I was going to say these headphone wires. These are on my left.
That's true, actually.
The headphone wires. And then now look at the object on your right. My cup of water, and you put them together, and then you make it eat things. That is the magical 4-step process of creating a horror, which I think is both fucking stupid as shit, but just that right amount of stupid where it's terrifying.
So, if you had a cup and electrical wires, what you could do is you could have sort of like a cylindrical monster with weird elongated wiry legs that has like an opening at the top of its cylinder, and in order to eat people it could just kind of stretch its legs and just put itself on top of people. So you know what I mean?
You turn a cup upside down on top of a spider.
Exactly, like how you turn a cup upside down on a spider, except it elongates its legs and bends them so that it can flip itself upside down without actually falling. Scoop someone up and then turn back upright. That could be how it eats people.
Yeah. We're actually lucky because we have picked things that are actually very similar to what he did. He chose these because he has an example. He says he has headphones on his left and a bowl on his right, and it's a large, rough, toothless mouth filled to the brim with wriggling and ever-tangling electrical wires that wrap around anything they can to crush and pull them apart. So it's like, he had very similar things, but made a very different thing to the thing you made up on the spot, which I like. I think it's just that little bit too ridiculous for me to want to use it in sort of my generally quite low fantasy settings. But I think sort of if somebody is running some high fantasy, sort of weird, abstract fantasy world like he very much is, this is perfect. He gives also gives a simple list of, you can roll a d6, and like if you're not sure what a horror is going to do, and you can't really think of anything on the spot, just roll a d6, and it's like, eats a human, double fists humans for eating, tries to swallow a building, crushes things into a ball to easily swallow, wants to eat something too big, throws up something half digested. 6.
These all sound like horrifying examples of what I can do. Again,
You eat humans?
You don't know me. You don't know me that well.
I'm gone.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.
Bitch, walk home. Walk home.
Fuck this.
Yeah.
I'm gone.
Now I am the leader. Now, I am the controller of the podcast. He has actually left. Oh no, I'm not good. Wait, he's coming back.
Hang on.
This
is my laptop and all of my stuff. I should probably go and get that.
Yeah, and I was going to say that I'm not too good at doing things on my own. You can't move your chair now because the cat is underneath it, so you're just going to have to try and squeeze into that small gap there. You're skinny, you can do that. Don't squish my cat.
You didn't squish him.
Bitch.
Thank
you for coming back. I've been waiting to eat you. I don't know where I'm taking this anymore.
Me, please.
So moving on to the next thing that falls from the sky. This is the thing that I brought up earlier on that I thought would be related to the lullaby theme, the Crybabies.
So the Crybabies are a little more uniform in design. They are. They don't eat humans. They eat horrors instead, and they cry when they eat them, which is kind of fucked up. Crybabies have a humanoid shape and appear made of electronics instead of flesh. They're like in his own words, junkyard golems. And then his final statement is, and they all have screens for heads. I was like,
they're electronic modrons.
God f***ing damn it, not more modrons.
I love modrons, they're the best things.
Oh, the See, I don't like these anymore. I don't like them anymore because
I like them.
Because they're like modrons.
They're not exactly.
No, they're not like modrons.
They're gorgeous.
Yeah, he also provides another sort of D6 list of what crybabies do. It moans in pain as it chews a horror, hesitates before biting the head off a horror, tears up while staring at a horror, sobs as it trades limbs with a horror, sacrifices itself to save a bunch of humans, pulls a human out of a horror. There's a 50-50 chance of the human being alive. And something else that it mentions is that the Waybirds sort of enslave these things.
Mm-hmm.
And because both horrors and crybabies get progressively bigger the more stuff they eat, they eventually have to put down the crybaby, which is really fucked up. And it does say the wail of a dying crybaby is so sorrowful that it exists for a day after they die.
It's kind of traumatizing.
Yeah, that's.
Could you imagine living in that area and just be like, oh, they killed another one. God damn it! Got to deal with this crying for another day.
That's so fucked up.
I would like to point out that I want to know if this entire setting is loosely inspired by Attack on Titan as well. Because it fits. Kinda. It's not exactly, but it does. It just popped up whilst we were talking about them.
Kinda, yeah.
I don't know.
Loosely.
It seems like it's very loosely based off of it. But then again, I am maybe certifiably insane. So
that is also very true. That one we know for certain.
Oh yeah.
And the final thing are treasures. They are effectively they're little orbs that fall from the sky that they crush into little chips that they use like gold pieces. It's a very secretive currency that they use, and it's only valid in Cradle.
Mm-hmm.
And in Cradle, the gold to spirit currency is 5-1. Yeah, and they fall from the sky in various sized orbs, and that's like pretty much all there is to the treasures. And there is actually kind of like a sort of a pattern as to how they'd fall. There's a couple tables and stuff like that. But that is something you can look into by going and looking.
When I read the headline treasures, I was kind of hoping for something a little bit more than the orbs. I like the orbs idea, but when I was picturing it, I was just picturing sort of like random objects that just fall from the sky, like what the horrors and the crybabies are made out of. Just random things. Like one day a heart will fall from the sky, and another day a trash can, or you know what I mean? Like random things that people could consider treasures.
It's like that Simpsons episode with the black hole, where they go into the black hole, and then
that one.
And then the extra dimensional beings are like worshipping the Zune because it was sent to them. It was actually just their garbage.
No, I haven't seen that episode. But when they mentioned stuff falling from the sky, I was picturing just a bunch of junk. And sometimes there are actual expensive, valuable items in amongst that junk that just falls from the sky. But I do like the orbs idea. That was just how I imagined it immediately.
Yeah. But there is the Council of Blue Jays and McGunz, as I'm going to call him from now on, has this very interesting rule called the Rule of Three, in which he basically says his Rule of Three when creating NPCs is number 1 is what they say, number 2 is what they don't say, and number 3 is what they actively hide, which is...
Oh, I didn't pick up on that while I was reading it. Yeah,
it's actually like a really cool system, and it's actually like very... you can really get an idea as to what these people are like just by reading this, and I really, really like it. There is Reverend Adalric, who, to my memory, started the religion. He says he's a prophet. He doesn't say he's only in it for the money, and he actively hides the secret of the Waybird. Archdeacon Freda says she's a protector, doesn't say she just wants to kill things all the time, and actively hides that she hates Adalric.
She sounds kind of rude.
Yeah, she sounds like kind of a dick. Priest Pepin, and that is such a good name.
I love that name so much.
It's so good, Pepin. says he wants the Waybirds to grow, doesn't say he's a megalomaniac, and actively hides that he would do anything to be leader. So he's probably like really skittish and quiet, but is actually low-key kind of a cunt.
But also at the same time, he could be that like really calm, almost sullen person that just kind of doesn't seem like they'd try to do much in order to work their way up, but is actually just secretly plotting the entire time and secretly moving up the ladder.
Paladin Lena says she protects the Waybirds, doesn't say she has no idea why they're doing any of this, and actively hides that she's in love with a Dalric. And Cleric Treffin says he's a devout follower, doesn't say that he's moments from leaving the cloth, and actively hides that he's an anarchist vigilante by night.
Now, because we've put the word vigilante in there, and we looked at the vigilante class a little while ago, all I can think of is this old cleric just pottering around, being all religious and everything by day, and then at night he goes home, takes off his priest robes, and dons a cape and a mask. It's all I can picture because we've looked at this class.
I'm Batman. Where is she?
I'm Treffin.
I'm Treffin, man. So you're Cleric Treffin? No. You just said you're Treffin, man. Yeah, it's my superhero name. So Cleric Treffin's it's your superhero name, right? Cleric Treffin? I'm not Cleric Treffin, I'm just Treffin, man. That's
beautiful. We've said the word Treffin so much that
it didn't have any meaning to begin with, but it has somehow still lost all meaning.
Now I'm starting to think of truffles.
Oh.
I'm hungry now.
I suppose treffining, that's a word. It's very different though.
I don't know what that word means.
That's where they bored the holes into people's skulls to release evil spirits.
Oh.
Most of them lived, surprisingly. They got quite good at it after a while.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'd heard of that technique before, I just forgot what it was called. That's been used in something that I've either played, read, watched, or heard about, and I can't remember what it is, and it's going to bother me for all eternity now.
Well, that's a very wide spectrum as to the ways you could have heard of it, so by probability, it was definitely one of those things.
Yes. I'm gonna remember it in an hour's time while we're still recording. I'm just gonna burst out and interrupt you. Because I've remembered what it is.
Nice. But the secret of the Waybirds, which is listed here, is...
Maybe we should keep it a secret.
Yeah, we should. Fuck it.
Yeah.
We need to keep it a secret. Go look at his stuff. Upvote it. He deserves the upvotes.
If you want to know the secret, go freaking look at it.
If you have the Reddit enhancement suite, which you should friend him. Or if you have the British version of the Reddit enhancement suite, you should make him your mate. Because I love that. I love that they use like sort of overly British terminology when you use it in the UK. Another like the final thing that's on here is something called a relationship chart, which I think is probably the most sort of innovative thing that he has done with the way that he does this, is when he creates like groups or specific individuals, he puts them in a table, kind of like a comparison table. The relationship between the opinion of the person on the left matches up to the person at the top. Yeah. So it goes across. So, for example, the table shows that Reverend Adalric, well, he doesn't have an opinion of himself because that doesn't really, like...
That makes... You could have an opinion on yourself.
I mean, I
have an opinion on myself. Not a very good one, but I have one.
Touche.
You see, you could.
You could, but, like, those ones are left blank on here. But, like, he thinks the Archdeacon is desperate for combat and a danger. Priest Pepin thinks that the Archdeacon has too much power.
The horrors think that everything is food apart from treasures.
Yeah, actually, yeah. It literally just said food, 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 food. Just all caps, everything.
Apart from themselves and the treasures.
Yeah, and they don't know what the treasures are. They're confused.
They look at the treasures and just go, whoomst.
Funk. I really like these relationship charts. I think they're super cool, and I think more DMs should sort of utilize them as like a quick cheat sheet as to who thinks of who in what way, which I think is super useful. But yeah, that is Cradle. If you want to read about it in more depth, there is plenty more that we very like heavily skimmed because we want you guys to A, read it, and B, like read the rest of his stuff.
We should put the links to the Reddit pages on.
On our
Twitter.
Yeah, we will actually. We'll tweet out DeathMcGunz's Reddit handle because he posts a lot of he's had a big hiatus recently and has come back and he's been posting lots of stuff like once every couple of days. He's been putting something out, and there's been some really cool stuff recently. The Infinite Library especially was super cool and super weird. And I would highly suggest you go look at it. We're going to look at Vargstad later on in the show, probably towards the end, because that is both of our favourite of the two, because it's a little less out there and a little more kind of...
It fits more in different settings. I feel like Cradle is one that can fit into sort of like specific high fantasy settings, whereas Vargstad, I think, fits into a lot more. Like
Vargstad feels like Bloodborne, and anything that feels like Bloodborne. It's pretty cool.
Also, for those of you who don't know, our main Twitter handle is @GOC_Tabletop. Tabletop. Yeah, I'd forgotten for a second there. It skipped my memory.
Yeah. So quick plug. If you want frequent updates, relatively frequent updates on the stuff that we're doing and stuff that's happening soon, you should probably follow us on Twitter because it's kind of what Twitter's for. You know.
Yeah, pretty much.
Generally speaking. Probably by the time this has gone out, I will have released the first episode of DM Journal, sort of experimenting with that a little bit, just to see if I like the format or experimenting with sort of how I'm going to do it. I recorded the audio a couple days ago. I edited it yesterday. Later on today, I'm most likely going to go and start making graphics for it. And it should hopefully be edited by the end of the week alongside this. I'm going to stretch my video editing muscles because I have not done so in a considerable length of time.
I haven't done it since like year 9 high school. No, year 10 high school. So that was 4 years ago, maybe. Yeah, 4 years ago.
Yeah, it's probably about the same for me. 3-4 years ago. It's been a while. So yeah, hopefully by the time this goes up, that will either be out or be very close to being finished. So I will be putting that out. And there's plenty of updates in there. There's little bits and pieces. So yeah, if you want frequent updates, Twitter is the way to go. We have a blog as well, which we reblog a lot of fun stuff on, and we post. It's usually where we link all of it. It's usually where we link a lot of our work.
Yeah, the link to our Tumblr page can be found also on the Twitter page.
Yes, it can. But that'll be in the description of this as well. As for YouTube and all the other stuff, I think that's all we've got at the moment. I think it's Twitter, YouTube, Tumblr, and I think that's it. Outside of all the places we host Charisma Check.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
At the end, we host Charisma Check on 4 different podcast streaming services. So, and presumably you're listening to it on one of those, be it SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, or Stitcher Radio. So earlier on this month, I think sort of around the 7th or the 8th or something, Unearthed Arcana came out, and we didn't look at last month's Unearthed Arcana. We were going to, and then it was, there wasn't an enormous amount to it, so it was like, is this worth looking at? Doing a full 20-minute segment on this. So we're gonna take a look at the Giant Soul Sorcerer, which I am surprisingly, I actually really like it. I was expecting it to be kind of and it's actually pretty cool. I do really
like it.
Yeah. And obviously Sorcerer is one of the more sort of it's one of those classes you can play over and over and over again. It's different every time because you just take a different subclass and it's a completely different feel to how it works. Especially with some of the Unearthed Arcana sorcerers, the Earth Sorcerer. I forget the name of it, but that is you become something straight out of Golden Sun. When with that, you're like fighting with a sword and you've got crazy magic stuff. Like, it's pretty fucking cool. Like, I forget what the name of the Earth Sorcerer is, but it is pretty rad. But the Giant Soul is effectively, you descend from ancient humans who were given power by giants, which is cool in of itself, and you are the ancient descendants, from the ancient giant kingdom of Astaria, or Astoria even. It's an O, not an A. And you've gained this power.
It works kind of similarly as to how the Draconic Origin Sorcerer does, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's relatively similar, which makes sense because dragons and giants are inherently related due to general D&D history. Mm-hmm. They like to kill each other a lot.
See, I feel like we needed a different origin for the sorcerer that feels similar to the Draconic Origin. It's like passed down by bloodline.
Yeah,
because you're very distantly descended from X.
There are quite a few like that, but none sort of this on the nose.
Yeah, and I quite like this.
It also works in a fairly similar way too, which I quite like. Because at first level, just like Draconic Sorcerer, you get +1 hit points per level, which is always useful. Because more hit points means less chance of
dying.
Yeah, less chance of getting morged. Also at first level, you get some free spells. You get 2 free spells per your choice of giant, what your descendant is. Obviously, you've got the 6 different types of giants: Cloud, Fire, Frost, Hail, Stone, Storm. And they give you different spells. I think were I to do this, I would make it so you actually get like a bunch of spells. You get 1 spell per level up to 6th, because that's how I have my version of the Sorcerer, is they get extra spells. So at first level, kind of boring. It's like nothing special. Like
I quite like it.
Like you don't get anything. You don't get any interesting features. You just get some spells, and that's all good.
But everybody likes aesthetically pleasing spells that you get based off of.
That is true.
What you choose. But
a lot of these are like objectively better than others.
Yeah, but that comes with a lot of things.
You get a cantrip and a first level spell. Like the Cloud Giant gets Minor Illusion and Fog Cloud, whereas the Fire Giant gets Firebolt and Burning Hands. The Frost Giant gets Ray of Frost and Armor of Agathis. And Armor of Agathis is amazing. It's such a good spell. Whereas fucking poor Cloud Giant over here just gets the Fog Cloud and Minor Illusion.
But that does make sense.
It does. Sense. It does, but at the same time, could have been a bit more interesting there. At 6th level, you get sort of a much more interesting feature, which is basically when you cast one of the spells that you gained from your Mark of the Ordning feature, which grants you those extra spells, you get a different thing based on what giant you picked. And so like Cloud Giants teleport, Fire Giants do bonus damage with their spells. Frost Giants grant you temporary hit points. Not only did they grant you temporary hit points, it buffs Armor of Agathis further. We did not need Armor of Agathis to be better than it already was.
You could always go further.
Armor of Agathis is just such a good spell. If anyone has seen Ford on Critical Role, Armor of Agathis is so fucking good. Such a good spell.
I feel like out of all of the abilities that you can get at 6th level, I feel like Fire Giant is the least interesting. It's not underpowered, so to speak, because you do bonus damage. It's just less interesting than the others.
Yeah.
Which is kind of disappointing, but it's not. I can't really complain about it because it's not underpowered. It's just.
Yeah, it's not as aesthetically pleasing as all the others, but yeah, it's not too bad. I think the real sort of highlight is the 14th level feature though, is Rage of Fallen Astoria. A, cool fucking name. B, when you cast a spell and expend a spell slot, you can increase your size by 1 category and basically gain the effects of the enlarged spell if the enlarged spell was good. You get bonus current and max hit points, more speed, more reach, your attacks do more damage, and you have advantage on strength checks and saving throws. You can do that once per short or long rest. You can just become a large creature. Imagine a Goliath giant soul sorcerer.
I don't want to.
That is some hardcore shit. That's fucking awesome. So cool. And at 18th level, Blessing of the All-Father gives you +2 con to a maximum of 22. And you can use Rage of Fallen Astoria twice, meaning that you can become a huge creature.
You can become Larg.
No, you're already Larg. You become Hug, Hugh. I don't know. And all the bonuses are cumulative, meaning that you get an extra 10 feet of reach, an extra 10 feet of movement. You gain a bonus to damage rolls to weapon attack equal to twice your con mod. Your maximum current hit points increase by 2 per... It's so cool.
Oh my god, picture our mouse folk.
Yeah, you
going from small to medium.
And then to
and
large.
Then I think they can go to large. And then they can go to huge.
No, they can only do it twice. I really like this specifically for Rage of Fallen Astoria. Like, it is super cool. It. Just like even in concept, super cool. And in practice, it's pretty great as well.
Like, I thought the Draconic Origin Sorcerer, who I have a character that plays that one, which is why I keep talking about it so much, but I thought their 14th level feature was pretty cool, of them getting wings. This, I'm now jealous.
Yeah.
I want to turn into like a half dragon. Please.
I mean, that's what the 18th level feature does.
I haven't reached 18th level yet, have we?
No, you guys are 17th.
Oh.
That in essence is the Giant Soul Sorcerer, and like, honestly, there's not a huge amount to say about it. I actually really, really like it. Very often these Unearthed Arcanas come out and they really suck. Like, they really suck. And like, recently they've been killing it. Like, the last few months they've put out some really good stuff. The Centaur was super cool. Minotaur rework was cool. And now it's like,
this is pretty.
This is awesome. This is going on my list.
What if you had a Centaur Giant Soul Sorcerer? You'd have a giant horse.
Yeah, that would be
terrifying. Could you picture that?
Oof.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. But on a scale of 1 to 10, I say this gets a 9.5. This is.
I'd give it an 8 because I think it's good. I like it. I would play one of these, but it's not. I'm not gonna say it's the best.
It's like I think whilst I think I'd say it's probably a 9. The first level kind of boring, and depending on what giant you pick, you're kind of putting yourself at a
that's why I gave it an 8.
Yeah, it's
good.
like
it's really good.
The first level kind of sucks dick. It's good, just not very interesting. But once you hit 6th and you get to the other levels, it starts to get a lot more interesting and a lot more enjoyable to play. And once you hit that 14th, holy shit, that's super cool. Like,
it's really cool.
Yeah. If anything, I think maybe just to make it a little more interesting, I'd swap the 6th and the 14th, just so you get that Rage of Fallen at...
No, because I feel like that would be too overpowered for a 6th level. I feel like if you were to put it at... If you were to swap the 2 levels around, you would have to nerf Rage of the Fallen Astoria so much to fit the 6th level that it just wouldn't be as interesting.
Thing is, a lot of Fallen Astoria is based on level, like the hit points thing. I don't know, but I feel like sorcerers should get 10th level features based on their subclass. I don't see why getting one extra meta magic should stomp out you getting another feature. I think I might do that at some point, is basically add a 10th level feature for all sorcerer subclasses. I'm going to do the same with bards at some point, because bards really need that extra subclass feature, because I only get 3. One at 3rd, one at 6th, and one at 14th.
And is it most of it just extra inspiration die? I've never played a bard before. Yeah,
I mean, like, some of the bard subclasses are super cool. Most of them are super fucking boring. The one that Ruben's playing in Curse of Strahd is like the most interesting one, because everybody seems to forget that Matt Mercer made College of the Maestro, even though it's the best and most balanced homebrew thing he's ever made. Like, College of the Maestro is like S-tier Matt Mercer work. Like, all the other homebrew he's ever done pales in comparison to just how good College of the Maestro is. Like, Bloodhunter, Gunslinger, everything out of the Tal'Dorei Guide, all of that can suck a dick. College of the Maestro is the shit. It's so fucking cool. Yeah, I think, like, that could be useful, but, like, again, it's like, this is... I really like this. This is immeasurably better than... I was expecting this to suck major dick, and it's actually really, really good.
It's
and I really
the GOC seal of approval.
The
Don't judge me.
The J.
Oh, did I say G? Oh no, I'm an idiot.
The
You're gonna change your name to Gak.
Gak.
Your name is now Gak. Hello, Gak.
Hello, my name is Gak. Hello and welcome to Charisma Check. My name is Gak. Welcome.
Beautiful, beautiful.
I know.
Sorry.
I should be an actor.
It's the GOC. No, for goodness sake, I did it again. It's the JOC, seal of approval. I ruined my bit by being an idiot. As usual.
The jock seal of approval is given towards this Unearthed Arcana. Good job, Livvie. Right. So, last week I had an idea. It was a good idea because I told you about it straight away. Fuck off.
I can dream, Harold.
Okay. Last week I had an idea about a little segment that we could do every so often on the show, where we do a setting pitch or a campaign pitch, where we will present our ideas for a setting or a campaign that we would like to run, or at least see someone else run, and sort of present our ideas inside, and to keep it concise because we tend to ramble a lot. We're going to try and keep it inside 7 minutes. So,
which is hard for us because both of us ramble on about things. Once you get us started, especially me, I don't talk very often, but when I do, oh boy, do I talk.
I think there was a good 5 minutes. Well, no, it wasn't a 5 minute. There's like a good couple of minute segment I had to cut out of the first episode. You just went off on a complete tangent, completely unrelated to
I don't talk very often. I don't say too much because I have to try and keep myself in check here. Because otherwise, see, I'm doing it again.
Yep.
Otherwise, just talk.
Yep. But the setting that I have is actually like a setting I'm going to run in the future, like very soon, actually, for one of the groups.
That I'm included in. So
yes.
You can't say too much.
I can't say too much. But I'm going to we have to be very general, like talk about things, because we've only got 7 minutes and we've only got so much that we can talk about. I'll start, and I will. I have a little timer on my phone. Hopefully, the little ringing timer won't be too loud. I really hope it isn't.
Or I could just have a stopwatch and I could just go whenever you're up.
I mean, it might not make any noise. I'm not sure. It's fine.
We'll see.
Yeah.
If it does make a noise, we'll just hate you. That's fine.
Nice. Okay, so 3, 2, 1, go. Right. So I got 7 minutes. So this setting does not yet have a name, and also doesn't really need one at this current time. It is a sort of a semi-traditional floating island setting inspired quite heavily by Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Most people, not everybody, but most people live on giant living titans that fly around in a massive, like, orbit in the sky. There are other floating islands around, and some are man-made and some are otherwise. And these giant beasts, like the smallest would be the size of an apartment block. The largest are like the size of sizable counties, you know. Like the largest one, for those who are aware, would be about the size of East Anglia, so Norfolk and Suffolk. Like, they're pretty fucking big. And civilization has grown in the form of some very untraditional races that are not usually present in fantasy. There are humans, there are the Offlaw, which are similar, like a mixture between Aarakocra and Rito from The Legend of Zelda. There are the Ruden, which are like mouse folk. There are the Safali, which are similar in nature to the Zora, just in appearance, but they're more sort of octopus-like. They have tentacles for hair, and whilst they do have like the blue, like scaly skin, that's kind of where the similarities end. And there are also the Delphi, which are similar in appearance to tieflings, minus the tail, and they have a third eye in the center of their head. Most of the people in the world see these giant titanous creatures as gods, with the exception of the Delphi, because reasons. If I have time, I will get into that. and everybody is sort of trying to live in harmony in this strange, fractured sky world, with some civilizations living on these titans and others are not. These things are alive. They are living, breathing creatures. Like the story is that one guy went down the side and then found an eye, just looked at him, and he was like, "Oh shit, this entire place that we live on is alive."
If that was me, I probably would have fallen off the entire fucking thing. I would have just let go and just be like, "Oh," and then fallen to my death.
Yeah. Fallen.
It would have just been that Roblox vibe of the kids screaming.
I'm not going to imitate that because that'll completely blow out the fucking microphone. And like this whole world revolves around these creatures, and I thought it was super cool. You know, skyships and pirates and flying around places, and only when you stop off somewhere do you have somewhere that you need to explore, which I think is super cool. You know, the humans, they discovered it. The Offlaw, or the Aarakocra, if you want to use like D&D terms, used to like rule the land. They were, because they can fly, kind of helpful. They basically just took everywhere over and had a giant empire until something bad happened and they exploded their titan.
Not a very good thing.
Yeah, their empire kind of collapsed after that, and they're all very salty about it, understandably. The Sefali are all very, like, we love art and history and culture. They're like Japan before the shogunate took over, and we're just like, you should probably stop caring about art and history so much and actually run your country. They're like, yeah, art and history and culture, let's do that. They're basically like that all the time. They just don't really give a shit. The Ruden are technological masters. They are super cool. They're little mouse people and they tinker with stuff. The Delphi don't like humans or religion because they think the Titans are dumb because another Titan told them that all the Titans were evil. And then he was like, yo, you guys have 3 eyes now because you can see the truth. And that's basically how that happened.
It just kind of sounds like a cult, though. Their entire race just kind of sounds like a cult that follows their Titan.
Yeah, a bit of a cult. Bit culty.
Because either the Titan is correct and all the other ones are evil, or he's wrong and he's evil.
Yeah, no one knows. And then there is one more race I've not mentioned because I've ripped it straight out of Owlboy because I love Owlboy. Owlboy is the shit. And I made sort of a little more serious version of the Bogowin. And they are nomadic people that fly around the world and go on like journeys and all that crazy stuff. They do some weird stuff. Like the Bogowins are pretty out there, and just like they are in Owlboy, just not as out there. And if you haven't played Owlboy, go play Owlboy because it's fucking amazing. Like holy dick balls. I'm using up my time to talk about Owlboy, but that's fine. But yeah, that is like effectively the setting. It is big, fairly interpolitical, lots of human settlements. There's a confederacy of humans, and then there's like the theocracy, the big nation that lives on the Titan, and there's the confederacy that lives out on a floating island. And there's this big world full of crazy stuff and weird creatures and wildlife. And I thought it would be a very interesting thing to present to players, and who knows? People might decide they like that as well. That's I still have a minute left, but I think that's probably a good place to stop.
So it's my turn.
Yep.
And I don't know how to do this because I'm not used to doing this. And I'm just going to ramble.
This is take 2.
And it's not going to. It's take 2 because the last time I panicked. So this is take 2. I don't know how I'm going to do it. This might go as bad as take 1, but let's see. So I'm going to start the timer now. So my setting is less creative than yours. It's not in the sky. I haven't gone as creatively as them making all different new races and everything. It's very...
It's not exactly a necessity.
No, it's not a necessity, but it's less creative. And I'm embarrassed, but it's fine. I'm not embarrassed. So I have a very earth-based... Earth, so to speak. It's not Earth-based as in there's not England, but, it's not in the sky. And... I have your typical races, your elves, dwarves, mouse folk, which are not, in the books, but
we use them
a lot, so I'm used to them. Something to note, elves are not very present in the campaign. They are extremely rare for reasons I will get into in a little while, as are Eladrin, which are rare to begin with, but now are even rarer.
Yeah.
I will at some point be creating like these weird moth people, which are going to be similar in mechanics to the Aarakocra, but are moths. Or I might make a butterfly sub race even as well. So it's not really going to be mechanically different, just looks wise.
Yeah.
But
with some minor additions, because moths don't have talons.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I'll do my research into bugs later on. But the main point of history for my world is that for the first few hundred years, it was predominantly metallic dragons and the mortal races, along with, your creatures, your beasts and everything. And at the beginning of time, so to speak, Tiamat, the god of chromatic dragons, was a little bit jealous, she was a little salty. Because there were the metallic dragons, which are under Bahamut, obviously. They were there, they were getting all the attention. She was like, you know what? Fuck you! I don't like this. So she planted an egg inside the earth and waited. And about 400 years into the earth history, this egg hatched and cracked apart a very large amount of, like, an entire continent on one part of my map. It just cracked it open. And all of these chromatic dragons just burst from the ground and started wreaking havoc. Because there were thousands upon thousands of these dragons that razed cities to the ground, wildlife, they killed almost everything. Yeah. And the mortal creatures were a bit like, well, shit, what the fuck we gonna do?
Because the elves just pieced out to the Feywild.
The elves just went, peace, went through all the portals to the Feywild and closed them behind them.
Yeah.
And
the majority of Feywild portals
just closed, and the ones that didn't close are kind of hard to find.
Yeah.
So
Feywild portals tend to be pretty weird in placing anyway.
Yeah, but all the rest of the people were like, okay, right, so we can't live on the surface anymore. Everybody get to the capital city of your country, and we gonna go underground. And over a few years, they constructed these underground cities, trying to stay alive at the same time, and they all moved underground for, I think it was about a couple hundred years to my history. Yeah, and then a certain period of events happened, and now they've discovered that it's safer to live up above ground, and they're there now, which is a couple hundred years before the campaign is going to start. My cats are being annoying, but it's fine. So, yeah, back to normal. It's on the surface again now, but that whole arc thing is going to be very prominent in the way I'm going to run it.
The fact
that there are all these underground cities now, the fact that most of the people, especially because there aren't very many tribal civilizations anymore, because most of them a couple hundred years ago, banded together and went underground with other civilizations. So tribal communities like orcs and everything, very rare nowadays, because they all had to band together.
All the orcs are either, sort of a part of civilization or they're dead.
Mm-hmm. And the only country, in fact, that did not go underground because they were like, you know what, fuck it, we are wimps, we're going to stay here, are my country of Dragonborn. Because they were like, you know what, I hate you guys anyway because they're dicks. Okay, my Dragonborn in my saying are dicks.
In most settings, Dragonborns are kind of douchebags.
I know, but more so in this one because they're not, it's not like from character to character all Dragonborns are dicks. Some of them are nice, but as a country, they're not.
It is a cultural necessity that you are a douchebag to everyone that isn't a dragon.
So they didn't go underground. So you've got that as well in there.
And all the new countries that formed, from those ashes. I think there's also, the fact that there's a lot of old gods that aren't prominent anymore.
Yeah, because when people moved underground, they left behind quite a lot of religions because they're like, these gods have abandoned us. We're not going to worship them anymore. They deserted us. They left us to die to these dragons. Why should we worship them anymore?
Yeah, numerous old gods have been relegated to warlock patron status.
So I've still got a bit of work to do on it. I've still got a lot of work I need to do on it. But I feel like that's as much as I can get in.
Yeah.
Without rambling too much, because I've still got some more I can talk about. But that's
forever. So all of the countries and stuff, because there's quite a few and there's some interesting ones there. But
it's going to take me forever.
Yeah.
And I've only got 45 seconds.
Like the general concept is kind of like, hey, everybody went underground for a while after some dragons tried to kill everyone, or when and if you wanted to apply this to your own setting, you could just say when X creature tried to kill everyone. Mm-hmm. It's like that's feasible. Like that's a plausible thing that could have happened, and I think that's super cool. Not to mention that thing of everybody going underground reminds me of a movie. I've told you this several times because I can never remember what the name of the movie is. It's a movie where human civilization went underground because I think they thought the world was ending. They lived underground for like several generations. Like entire generations of people have lived and died in this underground place. And then everybody gets given an arbitrary job upon becoming an adult. And then there's a boy and a girl, and they both get jobs that the other person wants. So they swap jobs. And then they do some stuff, and then they go to the surface. I forget what the name of this movie is. If somebody wants to tell me, please do. I've been trying to think of what this fucking movie is for so long. But it reminds me a lot of that. Mm-hmm. We hope it was useful, I suppose, to you.
We can later on down the line, especially when you start running this campaign and we know more about it and there's less secrets as well. We can talk about certain cultures that will be prominent in the in your setting that I know about because I was in one of them.
Yeah.
So
there is, there's just the general concept could serve as an interesting point of inspiration and the like, which is, it's always good to bounce ideas. Like as a DM, bouncing ideas around is the best thing you can do. Yes. It like talking to other DMs about what you want to do is the best way to DM as successfully as possible. You can run your plans by other DMs. You can run this and that. It's I would argue is the ultimate method of DMing successfully. So we figured this could be, at the very, very least, a helpful sort of something. Mm-hmm. Like, you could take something away from this segment. Maybe at some point in the future when we do this segment again, which, considering we do one of these a month, or we try to, or we're trying to do one of these a month, we could, in theory, probably do one once every episode.
Yeah, we could do.
Like, just
brains. That's how creative we are.
I mean...
Are we that creative? We could try.
Back to old... Mr. McGunz's stuff for the final segment of Charisma Check. This time, we're going to look at Vogstad, the Wolf City.
Just want to point out that DeathMcGunz kind of sounds like an alternative Reaper name from Overwatch.
Yeah, it does.
Just going on a minor tangent there.
Die!
Carrying on.
Yeah.
Werewolves.
There's a lot of werewolves here. It's kind of a city for werewolves. It's kind of the point. Very bloodborne-y. Very, very Yharnam. There is a cat. He's looking out the window. And now he's licking his neck.
They're being very scatty at the moment. So if you hear them running around in the distance, I do apologise. But...
we will put them down shortly.
I will shoot them. I can't do that. No, I feel bad just saying it.
It's okay.
I'm sorry if you hear the cats, but I can't help it. I'm sorry. I try and calm them down before we start recording, but it doesn't work sometimes because they're cats and they hate me.
Nice. Okay, so I will read the opening couple paragraphs as I did before. And then we will sort of talk about the most interesting points of it throughout. It's a little longer than Cradle, but we're going to sort of cover it a little more sort of adeptly per se. I don't know. There's a city run by werewolves for werewolves. Everyone outside the city claims it's a safe haven for those afflicted. It's safety for werewolves and for everyone else. Keep all the bad seeds in one place and they won't spoil the bunch. But to everyone inside Vogstad, it's not quite as simple. It's a home of debauchery. Non-werewolves travel here to indulge in carnal desire, prostitution, high-stage gambling, murder, and all manner of perversion. For the right amount of coin, you can find anything you want. There are no laws in the city, and there is no government and no region claims ownership of the land. And the next table is you roll a d12 to see what's going on around you right now. So if somebody, whilst in Vargstad, just goes, what's happening around me right now? Roll a d12. On a 1 to 4, there is too much drinking. 50% chance of a street fight starting. Okay. 7 to 8, show of domination. Presumably someone just going, hey, off my turf, bitch. 9 to 10 is, it says public fiche. I assume that's a typo and it means public feast. Number 11 is bonfire in the street. And number 12 is public assassination. We skipped over number 5 to 6 because that's a public orgy. Vargstad is a city.
Suited for people like me.
Evidently.
And werewolves.
And also werewolves. So, also you.
You don't know me.
I know that.
No, you don't. You don't know I'm a werewolf. You have no evidence.
I've got some silverware here. Hang
It
on.
only works in certain settings, so...
There you go. Poke you in the shoulder.
Ah!
There you go. She's a werewolf. So they have some he talks a little bit about the city. Everything is like weird and tightly packed and claustrophobic. It's always too hot and there's never any shade. There's no pets or animals. It's quiet most of the day. And they have some weird customs like don't meet anyone's eye walking down the street. Don't answer leading questions at the tavern. And do not, in full caps and bold, comment on anyone's smell, not even your own. Those are some weird customs, but I think they're something that the players can learn them the hard way, and that makes me very happy. There are various different sort of groups of individuals, and they constantly are fighting for claim over the city.
Mm-hmm.
There are the Beowulfs, and they are this sort of a name for any werewolf in the city. Just all of them collectively, and they all have different reasons for being here. A lot of them were tricked to come here, which I think is super cool. Like, oh, they'll take care of you, and then you'll get cured, and you can leave whenever you want. There's no cure. Can't leave. It's kind of sucks.
It's kind of like a prison city.
Sort of, yeah. A prison city with no bars, and you can also get a bond, which is like a wolf for hire.
Kind of like a mercenary.
Yeah, basically.
Just in the sea.
And you roll a d12 and you can get various different wolves of varying skill. You have a good chance of getting someone who's a bit shit. There are the Bastille. They're people born in Vargstad of one or more wolf parents. They wear masks and fight with terror tactics. They're led by this woman called Dorna Bluth, or Bluth.
They're kind of like internal terrorists that are trying to fight for the hardcore gangsters.
Yeah, they're like, wolf superiority and that sort of thing. Dorna Bluth says wolves are better than humans. Doesn't say that all she wants is the power that comes with fear, and actively hides that she wasn't born in Vargstad. Which is interesting. I do quite like that.
If people found out, they'd be like, wait a second, you're leading the group of people who were born in Vargstad, but you're not born in Vargstad. Yeah.
And there's a d12 where you roll to see what they've done, and there's all kinds of mostly terroristy stuff. It's pretty crazy. There is the Curse, led by Alchemist Ledande. They're like a sect of wolves that worship the suffering and follow the path of suffering, in which they basically they bloodlet, they fast, they run fat from their bodies, and they remove all their non-essential organs. They take eyeballs. It's pretty fucked up.
I feel like this is the most interesting group out of all of them, in my opinion.
Because you can really do some weird shit with this.
Yeah, and plus characters can just see them around and be like, what the fuck is going on there? Like, who the fuck are you? Why are you looking like this?
Yeah. The most elite members of Ledande's cult will have an eye patch and be little more than skin and bone. Like the werewolves, they shave off all their fur with a knife. Yeah, that's pretty fucked up. So, Alchemist Ledande says she's a paladin of suffering. Doesn't say that she's never been a werewolf, and actively hides that she uses the sacrifices of her people to make clones of herself.
It's a little weird.
Yeah. There are the Lumineers, an inquisition that has pushed itself on Vargstad with a patient and violent force. They are basically trying to kill all of the Beowulfs in Vargstad. Most of them are wolves who have abandoned their animal form, and they put shock collars that will detain them should they turn, and they chain themselves up at night, which is pretty fucked up. Mm-hmm. They are led by Saint Forlorn. He says he wants to bring peace and knowledge to humanity, and is using Vargstad as an example. Doesn't say he thinks all animals or animal-human hybrids are lesser than humans, and actively hides he has no idea what he's doing, and the whole thing is going out from under him. Spectre Cost is the head enforcer. He says he's a servant to the Cost. Doesn't say that he enjoys killing people, and actively hides that he's secretly a werewolf.
It's just kind of one big clusterfuck, this town, really.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Yeah.
It's just chaos personified, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. There are humans, of course, in the in the city, and there are some notable humans. There is Angus, Sabbath, Rain, and Dio.
Gotta love Dio.
It was me, Dio. So you can read about these people. It talks a little bit about who they are. It doesn't use the 3 rules thing, which I was a little sort of like, I wonder why I didn't do that. It doesn't really matter because they're still pretty interesting on their own. But you know, they could be interesting. He also presents a thing called the Hunt. He's basically said, I think werewolves transforming under the full moon only is kind of stupid. I don't really like it. But if you prefer the moon transformation or just violence, the Hunt is basically the Purge, except it's whenever the full moon comes out and everybody turns into a werewolf. Mm. And all the groups fight for control, just on the off chance that when morning comes, one of them will be on top. Again, very bloodborne, like exceedingly bloodborne. Like one night, everything goes to shit. Oh no, that's a bad. Like that's pretty cool.
That is very cool. I love it, because especially if you're in a party and you get caught up in the middle of that.
Yeah.
Hoo-hoo.
Yo.
Hoo dear, you're in for a rough ride.
Mm-hmm. So it also lists some reasons why you might come to Vargstad, which again you can go and check the link, go to his thing, and scroll down and have a look.
Again, all links will be found on our Twitter page. Or
and in the hopefully in the show notes of this episode, as long as Stitcher doesn't fuck them up again. The others should be fine. You should be able to look them. I'm not sure about iTunes, but if you're on Spotify or on YouTube, you can very easily go find those. If you can't really get them because...
You mean SoundCloud instead of Spotify?
Yes, SoundCloud. You can find them on Twitter, on YouTube, Tumblr, all that good stuff. And the final thing, which I think is maybe worth mentioning because I think it's kind of interesting, is that the optional werewolf mechanic. If someone is infected with lycanthropy, have them stand up. If the player sits down, they forfeit their character to the wolf form. This represents the call of the wolf within you. It's so easy, all you have to do is sit down. Whilst I'm not sure about the sitting down thing, it's like, I feel like you should probably do something else, because just making your players stand for the whole game.
Yeah, I'd probably end up just sitting down because I'm tired.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do like it.
I like it in concept. It is super cool.
Mm. And it gives your players a way of indicating to the DM without having to say anything. So like if it's during a moment, like a specific moment when they decide to do it, like somebody's having a speech or anything, you can just do it without having to interrupt the DM talking. Because you just sit down, and that indicates that your character's had enough, they've snapped. Yeah.
I quite like it. It's whilst I don't think I would do it, I think in concept it is pretty fucking cool, and I do like it a lot.
Mm-hmm. Personally, I prefer this setting idea to Cradle purely because this one fits into more settings easily, whereas Cradle is quite high fantasy. It's quite, you have to work everything around it. Like you have to have a reason for Cradle to be there. You have to have a reason for the stuff to fall from the sky and everything. You have to there's a lot more work that needs to go into Cradle in order to make it fit into into settings. Whereas this one, you could just dump wherever. You could just be like, oh, I like this. I want this in my setting, without having to do too much work around it.
Yeah. The only thing you'd really need to think about is like, how does this place interact with the rest of my world?
Yeah.
And that's really all you need to think about. Like, the rest of the place kind of writes itself, and I do like that. I will quickly sort of list the other posts you can look at because there was a lot of them, and he has been on a long stint of writing recently after a very long hiatus. I'm very glad he's back because his work is super fucking good. I wouldn't have said, hey, we should talk about this if I didn't think it was that good, because it is, holy shit, really good. Alongside Vargstad and Cradle, you have my personal favorite, Tallow, because holy shit, Tallow is amazing. The City of Embers, I love it so much. I can't talk about it because I'm stealing it for a campaign. I would have done if Livvie wasn't here and I would talk about it.
No, do it anyway.
Oh, no.
Do it.
There is The Drowned Mountain, which I'm also stealing. Pirate Queens, which are very strange and abstract and weird, but I do really like them. Muck, The Infinite Library, and then other sort of planar locations include Bright, Gloomwalk, the Plane of Shattered Mirrors, Dreamweave, and the Plane of Infinite Screaming Hands, also known as Manos. Those are a list. He also has somebody made him a very, very nice map that he puts at the bottom of some of his newer posts. It's made by //Mikaholism, which I think is a pretty good name. I quite like that. And yeah, that like McGunz's stuff is super good. I would recommend you take a look at it because I can guarantee, even if you don't like 50% of it, hell, even if you don't like 90% of it,
the one you do like,
you are guaranteed to find something in there that you're like, I want to use this because it is super awesome.
And all of his stuff is amazingly detailed as well.
Yeah,
it's not half-assed.
It's like, especially I'm looking at the one that he released, I believe, yesterday. He literally put it out yesterday. The Court of Thrones. Court of Thrones is pretty fucking crazy. Like, it is cool as fuck. Super cool. It's very out there, very strange and abstract. It's kind of, you really have to sort of, like, a lot of his stuff is very odd, very abstract, but it's super, super cool. I would totally give it a look.